regardless of the makeup of the audience, to spend time before the actual seminar began just wandering through the aisle and speaking to individuals who were waiting for the beginning of the seminar, and just greeted people and smiled and was friendly and so on, to hopefully begin to build connections with the audience. So I think in retrospect that served me well. It was sincere. I wasn't playing a game with people or pretending to be interested. I truly was recognizing that they were there, they paid money to come, or their companies had, and I had an obligation to interact not only with my content, but also with sincerity.
You mentioned your young children, and after 12 years of marriage to Doug Waldo, you get divorced, so you're in a single mom position then, correct?
Yes, I was single for 17 years. Mm-hmm. That's right. And my children are the two things I'm most proud of. They're both terrific. They both live in the Kansas City area, so I really am fortunate.
And what were the challenges like then? That was something that probably was not nearly as common as it has come eventually. Obviously, there are challenges. You were a busy person, and you did a great job. What were those challenges like?
I think there were always challenges just in terms of allocation of time, because I did have demands on me in terms of the work that I was doing, because I basically had sole responsibility for them mm-hmm. and for myself financially. So I did have to be out there earning income. They were certainly the focus of my life otherwise, and the three of us did spend a lot of time together intentionally on my part, as much as I possibly could. And they had other relatives in the Kansas City area who spent a lot of time with them mm-hmm. also, as well as my mother, who was still living in St. Joe. So I certainly had a support group of family and friends in addition to what time I was with them.
A few years on, you became one of the two first women to be a Jackson County Legislature. What drew you to the political arena?
Well, what drew me was a conversation I had at a cocktail party of 1974, as I recall.
Yep.
It was some kind of community gathering. I don't remember exactly what. And I was at the old Alameda Hotel, as some of the older people who may be listening will remember, had that sunken living room area. So I was standing there, and two young men, one of them being Lonnie Shelton, approached me, said that Mike White, who was the current Jackson County legislative representative, was not going to run for re-election in 1974, but was rather going to run for county executive. That would open up that seat, and they thought I ought to consider running for it. Consciously, I had not ever thought about running for office. 24 hours later, I decided to do it, and we were off and running.
That you were, and you served a couple of terms there and then moved to the City Council of Kansas City. What precipitated that move?
Well, I actually served one 4-year term on the county legislature, and then I realized that much of the action in the area of the city where I lived, which was the Brookside-Waldo area, the city council, city government, was really the front runner in terms of being significant to that area. So I decided, instead of running for the county legislature again, to run for the city council, and was elected in 1979 and served until 1983.
And what was that experience like? What would you say is maybe different as what we see now, which seems to be a lot of contentious activity and maybe difficulty getting things done? And we'll talk about many things that you did get done in the city. But
well, it was in some ways a calamitous 4 years, and I mean by that we had 2 firefighters' strikes, where at least in a portion of one or maybe both of those strikes, I'm not remembering for sure, the police took on many of the responsibilities of the fire department. So that was a extraordinarily difficult situation. And being on the city council, we obviously were directly involved in issues dealing with that. We also had the Kemper roof partially collapse, and luckily there was no event occurring, or there would have been people killed. We were not so fortunate because I was also in office when we had the Hyatt collapse, where 122 or more people died, and it was a horrific experience for everyone involved.
Well, you mentioned that you were single for 17 years. You are, of course, Kay Barnes, and that's because you married Frank Barnes in the late 80s or mid to late 80s. How did you two meet? He was a Chicago native.
Well, it's very dramatic and romantic in that we met at a hotel swimming pool area in Honolulu. I was there leading a couple of seminars for national seminars, and it was late in the afternoon, so the seminar was over, and I had gone to the pool and was reading a book, which is, for anybody who knows me well, I'll have my nose in a book whenever possible. So that's what I was doing, and Frank was there as an executive with Abbott Labs, meeting with some Japanese pharmaceutical representatives, and he had come to the pool, and Frank was very gregarious and outgoing, and he began or tried to begin a conversation with me, and I was not very responsive. And then he stopped trying to get in my face in terms of wanting to have a conversation. And for some reason that I've never fully understood, maybe it was fate, I decided to ask him a question. I don't remember what it was, but he did respond. We began to talk with greater interest. He invited me to have dinner with him that evening, and with a woman who was with him, who was another executive with Abbott, and they were leaving to fly back to the United States late that evening. So the three of us had a delightful dinner, and then a few weeks later, he contacted me, and we began to see each other long distance. So in less than a year, we were married.
And you did move to Chicago and live there for 4 years. What was that experience like for you?
It was a great experience in some ways, and I only qualify it because I still had Kansas City in the back of my mind. But his family was and is terrific, 2 daughters and a son, grandchildren, and obviously I got to know them all really, really well. He had a great group of friends. So I enjoyed my time there. However, I was delighted when he was getting ready to retire from Abbott, as he was several years older than I am, and suggested that we consider moving to Kansas City. So that's is the circumstance under which we returned.
Well, I was thinking that maybe you would have to coerce him, but it was his idea, huh?
Well, yes, although I'm not sure it was a fully formed idea when he brought it up to me, but I glommed onto it very quickly.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
Hey, Kansas City, Joe Spiker, Easton Roofing, back for another beautiful springtime in Kansas City. We are proud to announce our renewed partnership with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Kansas City. Starting in 2024, a portion of every job sold will be donated to a cause close to my heart. I was a big, and I encourage you to volunteer. And if you hire us for service on your residential or commercial roof, you'll know that a portion of the profits will go to a great cause. So call us at 913-257-5426. Easton Roofing. Integrity matters.
It's always great to get an update from Dr. Brad Woodall from Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture, 8 locations all around Kansas City, including the newest one in Raytown.
We are very excited to join the Raytown community. We just took over for Dr. David Frey, who retired and has then shared all of his patients with us to take great care of.
They do it all year round, and that means in the fall as well, when people get back to raking leaves and participating in fall sports, all those kinds of things, right?
Back to school means back for fun. Full backpack, we can help as your chiropractor. If you're starting fall sports, we want to make sure you have that physical, and we want to make sure you're in great shape. And if injuries happen, we've got your back.
And you've got it all around Kansas City at 8 different locations for Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture. Visit asfca.com/Danny. That's asfca.com/Danny. We're here at the 23rd Street Brewery with Matt Llewellyn. And Matt, basketball's over, football's still a few months away, but there's always fun to be had at the 23rd Street Brewery.
Absolutely. We've always got something going on here. The games are always going on. It's a great place to come enjoy everything out on the patio. Beautiful scenery out there. Great beer. I've got a great brewer, great food. It's always fun here at the brewery.
And the atmosphere is great and friendly and warm, too.
We always want to make sure you're a lot happier when you leave than you were when you came in.
Always fun here at the 23rd Street Brewery at 23rd and Castle. Make sure to come by when you're in Lawrence. If you'd like to join these and other fine sponsors and market your business to Kansas City's #1 variety podcast, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to working with you. Our guest is Kay Barnes. She obviously has led an unbelievably accomplished life, and we've heard about part of it, and we're getting to maybe part of the stuff that you are more familiar with if you're listening right now. And you do move back to Kansas City amiably with your husband. When the few years leading up to the point where you would eventually run for mayor, what was life like in the 90s for you?
We began kind of picked back up with where I had been when I had left to move to Chicago. And I mean by that, I still had a lot of friends here. Frank made friends so easily, and everybody thought he was terrific who met him and wanted to, quote, hang out with him and with us. So we had a very active social life. And he was also interested in the community and began to get involved in being on a couple of boards. Mm-hmm. So that was great for him. He also was a golfer, and so we joined Indian Hills and began to play a lot of golf. So there were those aspects of our lives that were working really well. In addition, I had gone on the city council in 1979, years past, to serve with Emmanuel Cleaver and Jerry Riffle, and those were the three of us who were there in our first term and kind of came on the council as fledglings together. Emmanuel and I had maintained our friendship, and he did approach me after I had been back in Kansas City for 2 or 3 years to go on the TIF Commission, the Tax Increment Financing Commission,
right,
and become its chair, which I did. And that really got me back into the city loop because it was an introduction to financing, to city issues, to city planning. So it was a really valuable experience. So that piqued my interest again in city government. Then when Emmanuel could not run for re-election in 1999 because we're term limited at 2 terms, and that was what he was doing, finishing up that second term, I began to think about running for mayor, made the decision over a year ahead of time, which really gave me the opportunity to meet and talk with a lot of people early on, people who were influential in the community, which enabled me, I think, to begin to build a base early on in that campaign.
You mentioned your cousin, Walter Cronkite. I mentioned to you before, I'm starting to read his biography written by Douglas Brinkley, and it's a fascinating story, to say the least. He is 21 years your senior, But you did spend quite a bit of time with him in New York and Martha's Vineyard and places like that.